Hi, I'm Shane. Welcome to my channel where I share ideas and tools that bring us closer to the best versions of ourselves. And occasionally on this channel, I also share experiences that have been very formative or influential on me. And perhaps no experience in my adult life has been more influential than my London Business School experience, my MBA. Not only did I do it in Europe, I did it in London, one of the most cosmopolitan cities in the world, where I lived for over 3 years. It was the biggest move of my life at the time, given that I haven't really lived anywhere else aside from California, right? And to go all the way across, not just the country, but also across the world to a new city, it was a big deal. In this video, I'll go through how I made that decision, the worst and best parts of the experience, and if it was worth my $400,000 investment. All right, so why did I want an MBA in the first place? And especially why somewhere in Europe or London? This was in 2014 when I had a pretty cushy job at Google. I had gone through consulting already, I have gone through startups, and I had ended up in one of the best teams that I have ever worked with, Niantic Labs, right? The makers of Ingress and Pokemon Go. At the time, it was a very communal or family feel for the team. It was only 30 people. Now they're like 800. There was a lot of influences and factors that actually kept me in place. On the surface, everything was ideal. Good job. I had my own place. Good girlfriend. It almost felt too comfortable. It felt like if I didn't leave the Silicon Valley now, I will probably remain there for the rest of my life, like a lot of my coworkers. In a lot of ways, that was the signal for me to actually leave, funny enough. London, to me, was a grand old adventure, right? A grand new adventure. So I applied there. London signified a brand new life, a brand new start in a lot of ways. So I quit my job. I broke up with my girlfriend. I moved all my stuff there for a 2-year journey on a one-way flight. In a lot of ways, it was kind of bittersweet to separate from my old life and start a new one. But yeah, we'll get to that in a bit. And of course, there are other, typical reasons that anybody would get an MBA, essentially, right? So if you're in a business track or an engineer, you want business experience, you want a salary bump, you want a promotion sometimes for certain roles. A business degree is essentially the traditional way of going about it. And also my undergrad was in business. And because I was surrounded by all these other businessy people who essentially saw the MBA or business school as kind of like a next, the next logical step in their career. I mean, I can't deny it. It was definitely shaped by that environment as well, right? And so a combination of very personal, I would say it's probably 80-20 split, right? 80% personal, 20% professional reasons. Before I go into my pros and cons of business school, I want to introduce you to LBS, or London Business School. It's a school that isn't really well known in the United States, but very well known everywhere else. It is often tied with INSEAD, a business school based out of France, for basically the top programs in Europe and one of the top programs in the world, especially for stuff like finance. It's located in one of the most gorgeous areas in London called Regent's Park, literally right across the street from one of the royal parks. And walk into the school and you feel definitely this like fancy British prestigious building that's all white. It's got these spires. So when I first visited, I was like, man, I'm studying here. And walking around the area, it's it's like Baker Street. It's basically where the Sherlock Holmes Museum is at, the literal Baker Street where Sherlock Holmes lives in the novels. And yeah, it's just such a pleasant, very, very nice place to live that's also very central to everything. Which brings us naturally to the pros, the best aspects of my business school experience, the city. If you're gonna be spending 1 to 2 years of your life, in this program, you will want to pick your city wisely. So for example, Duke University, which has a fantastic program, Fuqua, I might be butchering that pronunciation, but the problem is it's a wonderful program, but it is located in North Carolina, right outside of Raleigh. I don't know about you, but I much prefer either New York, which has Columbia, even MIT, which is close to Boston, over somewhere in Raleigh. For me personally, it is just so much more stuff to do. And as for London, there's a saying, and I'll look this up later, but there's a saying that goes, if you're tired of London, you're tired of life. And I tend to agree. There is so much stuff going on. There's so much culture that is created there. Not only is it one of the most ancient cities in Europe, it is also the capital of so much things, right? It is the literal capital of the UK. It is a finance hub, it is a cultural hub, it is a fashion hub. So needless to say, there's just there is an appreciation for culture, not just business or tech. And so many of European, Asian, Latin Americans congregate there, right? In a density that I just don't see in cities like San Francisco or in a lot of US cities outside of New York. I remember getting off the plane and getting onto the tube and just hearing all these languages that I didn't recognize. And that just speaks to how diverse the people there are. And from that diversity, I would say, spending 2 years or 3 years there and just interacting with so many people across the world, you get a sense of how people think, how people live, how people, behave, right? What is the social norm? And I think for the UK and the US, there is no more than 10% from those countries. So you're never over-indexed on any given country, no matter how big or powerful or major they are, right? It is actually very, I would even say, flat or democratic of sorts, which has really helped me with empathy. Not only that, but also in my career when I did deals with the Koreans, the Chinese, and the Japanese. Even my 3-month stint in Dubai, because I had friends who were actually Arab, it was much easier for me to acclimate to a new environment, to understand their mindset and the way they do business as well. The cool thing about the MBA, any MBA for that matter, is that you go into a new city with basically 400 new friends, however big your class is, right? Everyone is freaking super enthusiastic, and the MBA does, kind of self-select from more extroverted type of folks, which I definitely started feeling tired and a little bit fatigued from all the social stuff. But man, going into London with 400 new friends, it is a blessing. It is so easy to connect with people, to get people to do stuff with, to travel with, right? I mean, if you wanted to round up like a group of 8 friends who are just as gung-ho as you are, it is very, very easy to do that. My other favorite part about my MBA experience is the extracurricular activities. Honestly, I've never been that big with grades or academics in school. I've always gravitated towards extracurricular activities as well as leadership within these clubs, mainly because I love working with people. It's one of the reasons why I went to business rather than molecular cellular biology or pre-med. And at LBS, I was really involved with pretty much all the tech stuff, right? The Tech and Media Club, the Entrepreneurship Club or E-Club. I started their hackathon, which I won an award for. Probably make another video at some point about that experience because it was actually really formative. I ran talks, very successful business people and entrepreneurs in Europe. And also just did a lot of conferences, just organized a lot of conferences within the London startup ecosystem. So it was such a wonderful way and platform for me to get really plugged in and leverage my Silicon Valley background. I typically don't talk about classes very much just because I'm not very academic. But one of my favorite academic experiences in London was actually very experiential, all experiential learning. It's called Global Business Experience, or GBE, where they essentially send, you and your classmates, you get to choose which country, and they kind of, go through rankings and stuff like that to figure out where they're gonna place you. There is Hong Kong, Johannesburg in South Africa, New York, I think somewhere in Latin America, and Australia. These are pretty damn awesome places to go. And the whole thing, the whole emphasis is that it's an entire intensive week of meetings, of lectures given by top industry professionals. You do a lot of tours of these companies. It's quite an amazing program. And it was definitely one of my favorite classroom experiences, I would say. The other really cool thing about being so involved in extracurriculars is that it really contributed to my career. Not only was I helping people, but all of the activities I was doing to try to pull, the startup ecosystem into the business school made me, really reach out to people, bring value to pretty much the entire ecosystem as well as the school. And anytime you bring value to other people, you're bound to get noticed. And this attention eventually landed me an internship at one of Europe's best venture capital firms, or VCs, which I eventually also got an offer for. It also opened up doors for me to become a product manager without any technical, or engineering experience. So a lot of the value that has come into my life is as a result of, contributing to other people's lives. So that was the best parts of my business school experience. Now let's go through the worst parts, which are academics, probably by far, followed by extracurriculars, and then social. Now, I know what I said about, the social and extracurriculars were amazing, but everything has a double-edged sword. Academics-wise, just to be transparent, I have never really emphasized so much on that in all of my formal education from elementary, middle, high school, college, and of course, grad school. I had much rather focused on, all the extracurricular stuff over academics and grades. To give you a sense of how bad I am, I basically failed advanced financial accounting, which, to be honest, was really boring, and you should never put me as an accountant on anything. All right, next is social. The bad part of having 400 very enthusiastic friends immediately in business school is that it is very much a bubble, right? It's amazing how a small, relatively small in size school can basically be your entire life for at least the first year. So not only is it a social bubble, it also contributes to social cliques. Man, I almost feel like business school in a way is almost kind of like a social experiment where you get, 400 very gregarious folks who are just ready to go. And see what happens. So of course, by human nature, we're gonna get into cliques of people that, we're familiar with or we like. And after 3 to 6 months or so, your cliques, your social circles are almost kind of set for the most part, which is unfortunate given just the diversity of the student body, right? So I would say, on the macro sense, it's very diverse, but really in practice, often you do get pigeonholed unless if you try to get outside, it can definitely get very cliquey and it's a bubble. All right, so what is so bad about extracurricular things, all these projects outside the classroom, if they have benefited me so much? Well, they were extremely stressful. They were, to this day, not much has actually given me more pressure than organizing some of these events like hackathons or speaker series and all these things, right? So yeah, at the same time, of course, it's also raised my stress tolerance level, right? Which definitely came into use for all of the companies and startup experiences that I have had after business school. Which brings us to, was it worth $400,000 and 2 years of my life? Man, that's a hard question to answer, but I actually have to say no. And the reason for that is nothing to do with the professional aspects of it, but everything to do with the personal, right? I actually think that I had spent too much time trying to run all these projects and not enough time, spending it getting to know my classmates, my friends, and having all these social connections in the community, right? Every activity in our lives, everything we do has an opportunity cost, right? You choose one path, and that means just from a time standpoint, you can't do the other path. I was in Hong Kong, and I had extended my trip to Shenzhen, Shanghai, and Beijing to meet with like 30 other entrepreneurs and investors to understand more about the China startup ecosystem. I learned a lot, but at the same time, I have forgone an opportunity to, hike to Everest Base Camp with some of my favorite people in the program. Looking back, I think the social aspects are what I really appreciate, at least, for me today, right? So in a lot of ways, I feel like I did business school wrong. And if you're watching this video, if you're on the fence about, spending all this money, all this time, you're probably gonna get, some financial gain returns, some professional returns, some status returns. But ultimately, I think the thing that changes you as a person probably is through all the social interactions and the late night talks, right? The adventures and the mishaps that you have with your friends. And if you're currently in such a program, not just business school, but maybe in college or whatever degree, treasure those moments, because now if I want to do these same things, all my friends have moved on. The most that we can really plan is like an annual trip, which is already very wonderful. And I look forward to, any of these weddings, which is, serves as reunions for us. But the time to truly have adventures with them, it's gonna wait a while until they retire or something, or they, hit the jackpot financially wise, so we can actually, all hang out again more liberally. So yeah, guys, those are my honest opinions of my business school experience. Some of the most formative years of my life. That's really shaped who I am today, who you see in front of you. I hope it was helpful for you. And please let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. And I look forward to seeing you guys next time. Take care now.